You are what you eat is a common phrase in relation to nutrition that you've probably all heard before. But if any of you have heard me speak before, then you'll know there's a bit more to it than that. If you haven't heard me speak before, my name's Claire Munns. I'm a nutritional therapist and I run a company called Fresh Living Nutrition, where I help people to optimize their diets through either one-to-one sessions, or I do talks like this just to educate people about how they can get the best out of their food. So today the topic that I'm going to be talking about is ways of storing and preparing your fruits and vegetables to increase the amount of nutrition that you can get out of them. So the first thing that I'd like to say is that food is not a static object that's guaranteed to provide you X amount of nutrients regardless of how it is grown and prepared. Whilst the way that it is grown sets the foundation of the nutrients that it contains, it is only half the picture, as a lot can happen between the field and your fork. So knowing how to treat fruits and vegetables can make a big difference in how much of the great nutrients you're hoping to get from them actually make it into your body. The more that I look into this topic, the more fascinating it becomes, as it is so variable how fruits and vegetables respond after harvest. Some have the potential to be highly dynamic and responsive, meaning that you can create conditions to actually increase the nutrients before eating them, whilst others lose nutrients quickly, so it is all about protecting them from losses. The nutrients can also vary widely between different growing stages, as well as the way you cook them and what you cook with them that can make a big difference. Each types of fruit and vegetables have a special gift to offer us above and beyond their general being healthy for us. So knowing what this is and how to make sure you can access it is also a great way to build a healthy and diverse diet. For this reason, I've chosen in this talk to cover some specific examples of common fruits and vegetables to show you how you can get the most out of them. It's important for me to say at this point that no matter what, eating fruits and vegetables is a healthy thing to do. Even if they're treated poorly, you will still benefit from eating them. They'll always contain beneficial fibre, which will help to feed the friendly bacteria in your gut. So don't worry about being perfect if you can't access vegetables in their best form. It's just something to be aware of. So if you have the option, you can maximise the benefits as much as possible. So I'm going to start off with fruits. And the first example I have is apples and pears, because they're at the forefront of my mind at the moment where they're in season at my allotment. So when I think about apples and pears, nutritionally, there are two key special benefits that I'm looking for. The first is the fibre pectin, and the second is their generally high levels of vitamin C and antioxidants. Overall, out of the two, I would say the pectin content is what really makes apples and pears stand out. It has a huge range of benefits, providing a brilliant source of food to your healthy gut bacteria, helping to reduce LDL, which is the bad form of cholesterol, improving appetite control and helping to regulate blood sugar. However, even if you just get the vitamin C and antioxidants, these are going to support the health of your skin and your cardiovascular system. The important thing to realise when it comes to apples and pears is that the majority of the great nutrients you are looking for come from the skin, so don't peel them if you can help it. The reason for this is, as with all fruits and vegetables, the nutrients they make serve a purpose to themselves first and foremost. With apples and pears, the skin is a protective barrier, preventing the loss of water, and this is where the fibre comes in. And it also needs to protect the underlying softer tissue against UV damage, which is where vitamin C and antioxidants come in. So what can you do to get the most out of them? The first is in the way that you store them. Apples and pears are fruits that store relatively well, and they have the ability to be responsive and increase the amount of nutrients even after you harvest them. The best way to do this is to ripen them on the windowsill so they're exposed to the sun for at least a few days before eating. And this will significantly increase the vitamin C and antioxidant contents, which means you're going to get a lot more benefits from them than if you store them in the fridge. If you have lots of apples and you don't want to ripen them all at the same time, it's fine to store them in the cupboard or fridge, but then just get the ones that you want to eat that week out and put them on the windowsill so that they kind of boost up the levels before you get the chance to eat them. The next thing that you can do to help is in the way that you prepare them. So you want to keep apples and pears in their whole form until you're ready to eat them. Only cut them up just before you want to eat or cook them, because in their raw form, the antioxidants within the apples and pears will react with oxygen once the barrier of the skin is broken, and they will start to degrade relatively quickly. And this is the process that causes the soft part of apples and pears to become brown after they're sliced up. Now, interestingly, if you want to get the most benefits from the fiber pectin, which I mentioned is the absolute superpower of apples and pears, the best way to prepare them is actually to cook them. And the end product of this is called stewed apples or pears. And the way that you do this is to cut them into cubes and cook them in a pan with a little bit of water until they go soft. And that probably takes around 10 minutes or so. I love to add spices such as cinnamon and nutmeg to add some flavour. You don't need any sugar because they taste naturally sweet and it makes a great dessert. The reason cooking helps is because the cell walls in the skin are tough and our digestive system has a limited capacity to be able to break them down. So what the cooking does is it sort of pre-digests them for us by weakening and breaking open those tough cell walls, which gives us access to more of the beneficial fibre inside. And it presents it in a way that our bodies and also the friendly bacteria in our guts can access them better and get the most out of them. The polyphenol and antioxidant content of apples is not actually massively reduced by cooking, as the heat process deactivates an enzyme which causes the antioxidants to react to the air. And you can increase this process even further if you add some lemon juice or vitamin C powder to the apples while you're cooking them. The one thing that does get degraded by cooking is vitamin C. So if you want to get that benefit out of the apples and pears, it's best to eat them raw. So I'd say, why not mix it up and have a mixture of raw and cooked apples in your diet? When you're choosing your apples and pears, the first thing that you need to be aware of is that they are listed on the Dirty Dozen produced by the Pesticide Action Network UK, which looks at which fruits and vegetables are worst impacted by pesticides. And given that you want to eat the skin for their nutritional benefits, going organic is definitely recommended. So briefly, just looking at berries as well, which is another great fruit to eat. They have similar benefits to apples and pears, but their actual superpower is more in the antioxidants and phytochemicals that they contain. They contain a chemical called anthocyanin, which is particularly beneficial to brain health, and which can actually cross the blood-brain barrier. And one of the interesting things is that the humble blackcurrant, which is one of our main native British berries, is actually one of the highest sources of this beneficial compound, far better than blueberries, which are considered to be by mainstream one of the best superfoods to eat. During the British season, the best way to store them is at room temperature because they continue to build up antioxidants even after harvest. And if you put them in the fridge, that chemical goes to sleep and it stops that process. But the good news is when you're out of season, freezing the berries doesn't actually have too many negative effects on the antioxidant content. So when it's out of season, either freezing your own berries or buying frozen berries is actually a really good alternative. One thing to be aware of is it's not a good idea to combine berries with dairy products because the milk proteins will bind to the anthocyanins and stop them from being absorbed. So if you're going to have a smoothie with berries in it, it's much better to use a plant-based milk like unsweetened almond or coconut milk. So let's have a look at some vegetables now. The first category that I want to look at is leafy vegetables. And this is sort of things that you make up salads with. And here we're inundated with such a wide variety of potential benefits, it's actually hard to choose between them. But two superstars that I want to highlight are vitamin K and beta carotene. And other general benefits are folate, vitamin C, and huge varieties of antioxidants, which you get from the phytochemicals produced by the plants. One of the most important things to note with vitamin K and beta carotenes is they're fat soluble. So you need to pair your salad leaves with a source of fat to get the benefits. Research has shown that monounsaturated fats, which are found in things like olive oil, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, and nuts like almonds, cashews, and hazelnuts, actually promote the highest levels of absorption of those nutrients. In terms of choosing types of salad leaves, the overall take home would be to go for variety. It looks pretty on your plate, and it's also the best way to experience the full range of benefits from salad. But there are some guidelines that you can use. When you're choosing lettuce, you want to choose open varieties such as romaine lettuce compared to tightly closed varieties such as iceberg lettuce. The open structure of the leaves means that they're more exposed to the sun and pests, so all the leaves are much higher in nutrients in order to protect themselves from those threats. Dark green leaves contain the highest levels of beta carotene. And actually, it's interesting because the orange tones of this pigment are in there, but they're masked by the green chlorophyll. And it's what causes the leaves to look darker overall, the orange sort of under the green. Red leaves are a good addition as well because they contain antioxidants similar to berries with the anthocyanins. If you're adding spinach, beet, or chard to your salad, the nutrients peak in the young leaves, so baby options are best. But for the majority of other leaves, including kale, the highest nutrients are found in the mature versions of the leaves. When it comes to preparing your salad, there's a bit of debate as to what is best. Some people advocate wounding the salad by chopping or tearing the leaves and leaving it overnight, whereas others say you should only chop it shortly before eating. So why is there this discrepancy? Well, chopping and tearing the leaves will boost certain types of antioxidants, which the leaves produce in response to to try and heal the wounds in the leaves. And these will increase overnight in the fridge and last up to 3 days afterwards. However, whilst you increase certain antioxidants by wounding the leaves, you will lose other nutrients such as vitamin C and beta carotene. So the argument is it worth it? Well, in some ways, the beta carotene levels are what you want from the salad because they're present in the highest amounts. So solely eating chopped up salad probably isn't the best way to get the benefits overall. However, I think why not use both methods to your advantage? Chop up some of the leaves and leave it in the fridge overnight, and then add it to some fresher leaves the next day that you've just chopped up. And that way you're going to be combining the two methods and getting the maximum amount of benefits. The other tip is when you chop up the leaves, use a really sharp knife so that you minimize unhelpful damage to the cells and chop it up into a coarse size. Don't make it too small. The other tip that I've got with leafy things is don't just eat them raw. When you look at kale and spinach, light cooking of these leaves, again, will break open cells and release more nutrients for absorption. The other benefit is that it wilts down into small quantities, so you can eat a lot more of it. You know, if you imagine like a big bag of kale will wilt down into 2 or 3 spoonfuls. Make sure that you avoid boiling it in water that you're going to throw away. If you're going to cook it in liquid, make sure it's in a soup or a stew where you eat the water part as well, because otherwise you'll lose the nutrients into the water. So we also have vegetables in the cruciferous family to have a look at. These are things like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, and radishes. And these are all nutritional superstars, but we're going to focus on broccoli for the purpose of this talk, because it has a very interesting compound in it called glucoraphanin, which is a specific type of glucosinolate, which is only really found in broccoli. And it's been shown in research to have some really good all-round health benefits. It's highest in the sprouted forms of broccoli, but this is one of those nutrients that's really volatile after harvest, so it's quite difficult to actually keep it in the broccoli in order to be able to eat it. If you see broccoli that's exposed to the air and kept at room temperature, all of this beneficial compound will be lost in as little as 3 to 6 days. The best way to keep it is in an airtight container or wrapper and in the fridge. And under these conditions, it will retain the nutrient relatively well for a short time. And once you either harvest it or buy it, you need to eat it as quickly as possible. I did look into whether freezing or drying would work for this nutrient, but unfortunately it doesn't, because they need to blanch the broccoli at high temperatures before it's frozen or dried, and that takes away the nutrients. So I think that broccoli is actually one of those things that if you can get it either growing in your garden or from a local supplier, it's going to be really beneficial. Now I want to look at tomatoes, which are actually the complete opposite of broccoli, because these ones you may not actually want to get from a local supplier, and processing of them actually helps really well. Basically, tomatoes, the superstar content that you want from them is lycopene, and this is helping to protect our eyes and skin from UV damage. But you need a high amount of UV rays to generate enough lycopene in tomatoes, which is why growing them in the sunny Mediterranean is actually quite beneficial. And lycopene is very tightly locked into the cells of tomatoes, and it needs quite a lot of processing to get them out. So ways you can do this is you can bubble them in a soup for 30 minutes on the stove. But actually the processing that goes into making tomato puree is actually the best way for you to get lycopene out of the tomatoes. And then lastly, I know I'm running out of time, just mushrooms, which are really interesting because they're classed as a vegetable, but they're made of fungi, which are actually more biologically related to animals than plants. And because of this, they contain rare nutrients that you don't find in many other types of plants. And the particular one I want to look at is vitamin D. Now, vitamin D in mushrooms is only produced in response to the sun, the same as humans. So you need to put a bit of care and attention into mushrooms you buy from the supermarkets, because commercially they're grown in near darkness, so they don't actually have any vitamin D to start with. But if you put them on your windowsill and put the gills upwards, you will, for a couple of hours during the middle of the day, doesn't matter if it's sunny or not, because they don't need a lot of UV light, you will get a massive increase in the amount of vitamin D, to the point where you only actually need to eat 3 mushrooms to get your recommended daily dose of vitamin D without worrying about having to take any supplements. And the last thing, that just eating mushrooms in general, you don't actually have to do anything to them, is that they contain special types of fibre that are really beneficial for our immune system. And they have a clever relationship with the immune system, where they can make it stronger but without making it overreact. So it boosts up the sort of immune fighting properties without any of the negative effects of an immune system that goes sort of a bit overboard. And you don't have to use exotic types. Button mushrooms have this effect, just the same as like the shiitakes or any of the other types of mushrooms. But they all contain different fibres that do different things with the immune system. So as much as you can mix it up and eat different ones, you'll get more benefits. So I hope this talk was interesting, and I open the floor to questions.